Black eyed peas I don't like. They don't have much flavor. My favorite of all the brown liquor peas is purple hull jabers, which is jaber is Geechee for pea. And then it's crowder peas. Then it's the field peas. And then it's black eyed peas if I can't get any of the others. The reason the black eyed pea is actually a mutation of the crowder pea, people like it because it's a larger pea. But the crowder pea has a lot more flavor going forward, especially when you're wanting to do your Hoppin' John and you're going to put rice in, which I am actually going to put in Carolina Gold rice, which is one of the original, it's a short grain, one of the original cash crops. It's a beautiful rice. It's like if I cook just plain rice, people beg to eat rice, and I like this rice. But it's because it is a short grain, and I always wondered when my grandmother would say things like, all I need is, you know, some rice and some peas and my fingers, and I'm good. And I was, of course, by the time I came along, everybody was on the hop, which was, you know, long grain that fell apart all over. But that rice, yeah, you really can just eat with your fingers. You do not need a knife or fork, which, by the way, you wouldn't have had a knife or fork. You wouldn't have been standing up along the wall eating with a hoe cake and sopping. Do you know what sopping is?
Yeah, oh yeah.
What is it? Let him tell you. He doesn't know what sopping.
What do you think sopping is?
You like to do it though.
Bread and gravy.
Yeah. Bread and syrup, bread, whatever.
Yeah, you like to do that all the time.
Yeah. And that's what you would have been doing for the most part.
He does that.
But the rice, the rice is beautiful. It makes creamy. When I do the jambalayas, because I never liked jambalaya before until I found out about the Carolina Gold rice, because I was like, I don't understand this dish. It is just kind of there. But when you put the Carolina Gold rice into it, it makes it this creaminess to it. It is just delicious. It's beautiful. Of course, it was one of the cash crops, and second and third sons would get slaves and money and move west. That's how the jambalayas and the gumbos make it to Louisiana. And of course, because King Cotton took over, you know, it kind of disappeared from South Carolina, which is where it was at. And supposedly the story goes that a ship's captain said in the Charleston Harbor had to have repairs done, and he did not have the money to pay for them. He's like, but I got some rice seeds. I think it'll grow here. And supposedly that's how Carolina Gold made it to South Carolina. Yeah. Madagascar, I believe. Yeah. So it's one of those, but it grows great there in the 90s. And there are a couple of chefs, which I have a whole thing about. There are a lot of southern restaurants that are not done by southerners. That, like Hugh Atchison, lovely man, I have met him, but he is from Canada. And he has 4 southern restaurants that he's making a mint of. Mm-hmm. So there's a chef in South Carolina who claims he discovered Carolina Gold. But I'm like, Thomas Jefferson wrote about Carolina Gold, and I don't think you're that old. What you found were some descendants from slaves who were still growing rice, because even my mother's like, oh yeah, I remember them growing rice in Richmond Hill when I was a little girl. And so there's a couple PhD types in the agriculture deal. They started growing it on, what is it called? Carolina Plantation. I'm not about to draw a blank. On the PD River, and I just like to say PD River. And it's like $10 a bag. But I ordered online when they're having free shipping, and just get a box at a time, because it usually lasts me 6 months. And they do the free shipping usually around Mother and Father's Day, and then around Thanksgiving for the holiday. Makes a wonderful rice pudding. Because when of course, once again, Mahatma rice was the deal when I came along. And compared to what you make with the short grain rice, because I've made risottos with it, it makes a beautiful creamy rice pudding. You can find it locally at Whole Foods, which tells you how much it costs.
How big a bag do you get?
2 pounds. Yeah.
It's cold rice.
Yeah. So yeah, but if you get a chance to get it, you want to. It is a beautiful rice. It really is. It is gorgeous. Cooked the same way, but it does something extra to your pot. Hannah was the enslaved cook for the Smiths. Cooking out here, we just cook. Doing the beef stew, doing the Hop and John is a dish you could do after your initial preparation. You walk off from it. You put 6 quarts of water in the pot, you ain't got to worry about it again. See, that's easy cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody complains about, but that's slow cooking. No, it's efficient. You can do other things.
Yeah.
I only have to come back to check on it every hour and a half. You need more water?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Whereas frying chicken, which has been, because my specialty is Southern poverty food, which is another term I'll take exception out. I'll figure out that later. But fried chicken is not Southern poverty food. Fried chicken takes too much time and effort, and you have to stay around it and focus on it. That's why if you went to somebody's house and they served you fried chicken, you knew they thought highly of you because they had to pay attention to your meal by either not doing something they normally do or somehow working out their schedule to be able to prepare your meal. That's why it was a Southern delicacy if you did fried chicken. So in my case, with us doing this, we're going to do the fried pies. I don't know if we're going to do whole cakes or not. This depends.
I'm not for it.
On time. I brought cornmeal and
Alright,
which is part of the big stopping thing. Because whole cakes are easy.
Yeah.
It's cornmeal and water. You can take it with you to the field, mix it up with water, a hoe, flat hoe, wash it off. That is a griddle. You would fry some salt pork. That's the grease and the salt for your hoe cake. You just fry it. It's a cornmeal pound cake. Just fry it in salt pork grease. Tastes very good. Very good. Tastes excellent. Oh, just put some flour into it.
I just did.
Oh, then yeah, you're good. Yeah, we'll go ahead and brown our chuck roast and cool. And I can tell by the way the lid's going down that the peas are beginning to melt. I did the peas at home. In the crock pot, you do not have to soak the peas. If you do them in the crock pot, all you have to do is rinse them out, pick through them. And for my Hop and John, one of the things is we've lost a lot of flavor today. I use a lot of spices. If you want to find a new recipe, go to the recipe books that are early 1900s back. Today, whereas we pretty much cook with salt, pepper, and sugar. Then, because you bought spices from vendors that came through the peddlers, they last for years. So for my Hop and Johns, I took an onion instead of chopping it up. I studded it with cloves and put it in there. There's bay leaves. There's a cinnamon stick. Nutmeg goes into everything. That's the one thing I did find from the old cookbooks. Nutmeg, I don't care about fried chicken or whatever. Nutmeg goes on everything because it is fantastic. In fact, the first recipe I did was one about a beef stew, and it was like, instead of white potatoes, of course, it called for sweet potatoes, called for parsnips, and bay, it called for some cinnamon stick, it called for the cloves studded in the onion, and it called for nutmeg. And I was like, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves? That don't sound right. But I went ahead and did the recipe the way it said. It made a believer out of me. It was perfect. So from that point on, it's like I have to have whole nutmeg because it doesn't take much. It's only like 4 or 5 scrapes.
Right.
And it's not that you taste nutmeg, but it does something, kind of that umami thing with the pot. That you know it's not there, but you don't need as much salt. That's the other great thing here. Because like my nephew, I did the beef stew with the oxtails and the chuck roast, and we were going to take him to Maryville to visit their basketball program, and he's like, this is good. What's the recipe? I said, it ain't gonna taste the same without the smoke. and it doesn't. If you cook it at home, when we do cooking classes, I have to tell the students, now you will know, when you do this at home, everybody will love it. But you know that if you had a fire with some smoke, you wouldn't have used as much salt, and it would taste a lot better. It does not do the same. The fake smoke, the liquid smoke thing, it does not taste the same. The closest you can get to it, there's a guy I work with who does cook, but if you have a smoker and put the dish in the smoker so that it gets the natural smoke, it really does. People ask me a lot, do you cook at home a lot? Not anymore, because I know that it's not going to taste the same. Because, you know, here, like with the peas right there, I want to have ham hock in it. That would have been the only salt you had, would have been salted meat. That's all that's supposed to go in there. It not only preserves the meat, but it also helps you to conserve just shaking salt. The idea of putting salt on the table, and sugar's the same because you had to buy it. You know, they would have looked you crazy if you were labeling teaspoons of sugar into some coffee. They'd have been like, hold up, we have to pay for that. You better nip off some, put it between your cheek and gum, and sip. So, because I'm doing it out here and it's going to get that smoke, I didn't worry about putting extra salt in, because it will end up getting the flavor just from the salt pork. Whereas if I did it at home to eat at home, I'd have put the salt pork in and some salt, and then tasted it later and probably put in more salt, and then there would have been salt sitting on the table as well. Whereas out here, you don't think about it.
Now, do you cook with salt pork at home?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The season have to. If I'm doing peas and stuff like that, you know, like I said, my specialty is Southern poverty food, which I take exception to. That's a term that comes about after the Civil War, and which is one of the reasons Southern food was talked about so bad for so long and looked down on. But most people and most of my friends who are in food history focus on the top 10%. What do they serve for dinner at Monticello, Mount Vernon, or some governor's mansion, something like that. 90% of us ate Southern poverty food and we call it food.
Right.
So that's the big thing. And so because so many Southerners were taught to turn away from food, because like cornbread was considered poverty food. It wasn't really until the late 60s, 70s that cornbread was beginning to be accepted. You know, fried chicken was considered Southern poverty food, even though it's not. You know, all of this stuff, and because the native Southerner had been taught that their food was so bad that as anybody got education or anything, they no longer wanted to be associated with that food. So in the 90s, late 80s, you had a lot of non-Southerners who were looking for some way to distinguish their restaurant. Southern poverty food became a way. So like, you know, it was very common. Friday or Saturday, depending on what religion you were, you had fish and grits.
Right.
So I remember probably mid-90s, I went to, was it South City Kitchen? It's one of the ones downtown. And they, for $20 at the time, they had, let's see, garlic shrimp served on a bed of cream grits for $20. And I was like, that's fish and grits. And honestly, shrimp, lobster, all of that was poor people food also, because they're bottom feeders. In fact, Boston, their servants in the 1600s had a strike to not have to eat lobster more than 3 times a week. Because it was so plentiful, you could actually walk down to the harbor and just pick them up.
Right.
And you know, so it's like, yeah, we'll just go feed them some lobster. That's no brainer. So, you know, all these foods that used to be poor people, like crawfish, things like that. You know, I went to go, last weekend I went to visit down home with my uncle in Statesboro. And so my uncles are still in the thing, if you visit them, they have to give you something. So I went to visit my aunt and uncle, and he was like, I don't have any sausage today, because he's the last one who knows how to make sausage and how to, you know, cut up the hog and all that stuff and raise his hog. He's like, I went fishing this morning. I'm going to give you some fish. You have to, you know, you visit somebody, you have to get something from them. My last uncle who, like 2 weeks ago, we had, not 2 weeks ago, beginning of January, we had the deer jambalaya. And it tasted like a well-aged porterhouse steak, but just a little extra something to it for the beef part of it. Because they had already drained it, and honestly, it was from a visitor who came by in October, and I was mentioning the fact that the last uncle that hunted had passed away 2 years before. I said, I really need some deer to make jambalaya, because that's the best jambalaya I've ever made. And she was like, she's from Michigan, she's like, I got a freezer full of deer and I'll send it to you. I was like, okay. Here's my double check. And she did. She sent me 2 huge deer roasts. So I aged it for a week in the fridge by putting it in 2 vessels so that the blood would drip out down to the other one. And then, I told you about green grime, right? Yeah. A friend of mine from Trinidad gave me a recipe for green grime, which is awesome. It pulls the wild right out of everything.
What is that?
It's a pickle seasoning is the best way to describe it. It's parsley, cilantro, onion, hot and sweet peppers, salt, black pepper, garlic, onion, green and regular onion. Grind it up and you pour vinegar over the top of it. So it's like kind of like we do our pickle vinegar. You take out some of the peppers and you just pour more vinegar on top of it. So I make it once a year, usually around Christmas time, and it's enough to last you for a year. So you put that in, let it brine in that overnight, and it just pulls the wild things right out of the deer. And made the jambalaya, and it's like, yeah, that's deer meat. But it just tastes, that is the best one I've ever made. Squirrel's good too, but I don't like it squirrel.
What are you cooking now?
This is a beef stew. We are browning our chuck roast right now to get some color to it, since finally the fire is actually catching. And we're also going to do some hoppin' john, but the beef stew is going to have that in there, as well as the I have some oxtails over here, which one of the things we were discussing, because most Americans go for the big oxtails, but they're not the ones with the real flavor, it's the small ones. The small ones are really good. Oxtails used to be very cheap, and one of my Twitter feeds called Soul Foodie, he has he makes the same hat that Donald Trump had. He calls said make America great again. He has things that make oxtails cheap again. Oh yeah, we just dump that in there, and we're going to put the beef broth in there. Got it. Okay. And because she was asking me, where'd you get your oxtails? Because oxtails you used to be able to get, well, my grandmother used to be able to get a whole tail for $1. Wow. It was poor people food. It's like you get like 4 oxtails for $10. And so I was like, I was like, let me go ahead and get these 2 packs of oxtails.
So you just brown the chuck roast and then putting the oxtails in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in that pan you just have some kind of oil.
Yeah, we use lard.
Wow.
They did a great advertising deal.
This is all unhealthy.
Well, actually, your body knows how to process lard. There was a time you would not eat what an animal would not eat. If you put Crisco and lard in the woods, they will not eat the Crisco. They will eat the lard because their body can process it. They did a great job with the advertising because your body has no clue what to do with Crisco. The lard, like if I fry chicken, I only use an inch of grease. And when I finish frying, I have an inch of grease in the pan still. With Crisco, when the artificial shortness comes, that's when you get the deep fat frying. Lard smoke point is 700 degrees. You are supposed to fry at 425. Crisco smoke point is 400 degrees. People think you fry at 350. What do you bake a cake at? You're baking in grease. That's when deep fat frying comes about, because you have to surround it so you can bake it in grease. That's why when you take it out, you have to put down paper towels. I don't when I fry in lard, because I fry at the correct temperature. It does not absorb the grease. Because you're baking in the grease, all this grease has to leach back out, and you're probably eating at least a tablespoon of grease for each piece of chicken, because it has actually absorbed into the meat itself. They did a great job, and thank God for the Latino community, because had it not been for them, So we bought into it when they said, "Oh, your fried chicken will taste the same." I remember my grandma was like, "I don't know why y'all eating that fried chicken. It tastes like a paper bag." And she was right. But when they tried to convince the Latino community, your tamales will taste the same, they were like, "No, they don't." And that's where people are like, "Where do you get your lard if you don't have a fresh butcher near you?" If you have a Latino community, there will be this. It's better from a butcher, but at least that's better than Crisco. And like we just put maybe a half inch was in the bottom of the pan, the brown chuck roast with it. You know, it's one of those things. And when you get biscuits like that, you can only get that from lard because lard never gets hard. Even if you freeze it, it always has some clay in it. Whereas the artificial shortenings go hard, or completely hard. You know, that you get biscuits like that instead. It only and if I do a 2-pound bag of flour, it only takes 2 ounces of lard to make biscuits. But we're a wealthy country, and most Americans' mentality is if 2 ounces were good, if I double it, it'll be twice as good. So usually the first thing I do when I go to a new site is I'll fry chicken, and everyone's like, "What did you do different with your chicken?" Lard. You know, because you would never have, because of the fact that you had to render your own fat, you would never have filled a pot with grease to cook one meal. Because grease was too valuable. It starts fires, you know, all spinning wheels, all yourselves, the whole 9 yards. And you only get it once a year when it's animal killing season, where you're killing the hogs or cows or sheep, whatever. So unless, you know, 2 hogs got in a fight later in the year and one of them lost really bad. But that's the only time. So you're not going to fill a pot to make a meal, one single meal with. Because even today, because we're so used to deep fat frying because of the artificial shortenings, you do it and you're like, "What am I going to do with this grease?" I got a whole pot of grease.
Till the next meal.
Yeah, what are we going to do with this sitting here? I mean, I even made that mistake. Peanut oil is 600 degrees. You fry peanut oil. Because there's a website called Top Secret Recipes, and they have fantastic recipes. The secret one, someone sues them every so often, they go down, so they're down right now. But like they had the KFC recipe, and they had the Krispy Kreme donut recipe. I was excited. The secret is nutmeg for the Krispy Kreme donuts. So I went out and got a deep fat fryer. I went out and got peanut oil. And then I'm like, I only want 4 donuts. There's enough dough here for 4 dozen. What am I going to do with all this grease after I fry my 4 donuts? So it's one of those things, because in the modern era we are very wasteful. If you're cooking here, you are not trying to waste. People ask a lot about, what do you do with leftover food? There is no leftovers. What little bit goes out to the dogs. You throw it out the door, it will be gone. But there is none of this 3 days later. I still got this sitting in the fridge. That is not the case here at all. So any questions or anything?
What's in the smaller pot?
That's going to be my Hoppin' John. They've got the Crowder peas in there right now. And once they cook, once they melt down, then I'm throwing a handful of Carolina Gold rice, and that'll be it.
So, how long ago did you put the peas on?
Oh, the peas, actually, those I cooked at home in the slow cooker originally. I'm just letting them melt. Yeah, because I froze them and just letting them melt down. That's it. And then we're going to, once they melt kind of, and I can throw my rice in, we're going to then end up peeling and boiling our potatoes to make fried sweet potato pies. As I was telling him, the fried sweet potato pies is also an enslaved food, because when you're making pies for the bakehouse and you cut off the edges, you will flatten it out. You can make a savory or a sweet pie for your own family is what the cook would usually do. And they're really good. Of course, anytime you fry dough, it's going to be good.
Right.
So we've got a pastry dough, and we'll just end up.
So then what do you do with the sweet potatoes? Do you cook them first?
Yeah, we'll cook
before
them
you
first.
Put them in the
Right. Yeah, before we put them in pastry, we'll have to let them cool down some before we put them in pastry. So we'll probably send them in the door or something, so they can cool down.
So do you have a restaurant, or you do cooking classes, or?
I actually work in IT. This is my passion, though. I do have a cookbook that they sell in the house, and I'm working on my second cookbook now. But this is my passion. I would have loved to have majored in history when I was in school, but my father reminded me I didn't have a trust fund. He knew I didn't want to teach. So I've gone back to get